The best signal that you've hit vibrations is when people are getting your brand tattooed on their bodies. The difference between all these barista oat milks is 1% of ingredients. I do believe there's no IP in CPG. They're not baristas, but these are people beyond that who have a bunch of other interests and desires and sort of identities. And is there anything at that deeper level which links them all together? The killer metric for creative people and creative entities and businesses and brands is not about having good ideas, it's about having lots of ideas. This is the only way to do it. You have to go in the direction where everyone else isn't going. Okay, if they're all going that way, the answer is not that way.
What I'd love to start with, mate, is, so obviously we went out on Saturday, had a lovely time gallivanting around Nashville, drinking a lot, eating a lot, having some amazing conversations about everything you've built with Minor Figures. But one of the things that I really thought was interesting is your principle of asking the question behind the question and how that applies to brand building, because Minor Figures is this feverish cult-like, crazy, beautiful brand. So you just want to just detail that, and then we'll just go wherever the fuck we go.
Answering the question behind the question definitely became a strategy, but it began as a sort of a coping mechanism from having a complete lack of experience. And I know that a lot of people start businesses for the first time having never had that experience. But, for me, that showed up in a particular way, because my life before Minor Figures was playing music. I had no sort of qualification, no reason being in a business context. So it was always like, well, why do all these brands, 2014, right? There's a cohort of brands and people that have been around us before us, rather, and obviously lots of amazing and successful, examples of brands in FMCG, CPG. But nonetheless, lots of kind of actions and sort of decisions made on behalf of those brands or by those brands. We were like, why?
Any examples of that?
Well, the first memory, or the oldest memory I have of that, was a really mundane thing, but it was like building a website for the first time. And this is really kind of the combination of inexperience multiplied with very restricted budget. So not only is there a sort of a question mark over decisions, but also it's like, we really have to ask these questions, because if we fuck it up, that's going to, be bad. And so we were building a website, and it's like, well, what's this website for? And like, you look at everyone's website, especially at that time, I'm sure it's all kind of, evolved somewhat since then, but basically everyone had like, product shots and about. It was always about. And at that time, the sort of mid of the last decade, 10 years ago, it was all about, claiming or putting out there your sustainability sort of ethics. And so there was always like a tab about that. And it was like, just all kind of seemed a bit redundant. It didn't really feel like that was enough for us to invest in doing it. So question. And then it's like, well, if it's not those things, well, what is the thing that makes it worth doing? And it's either, it's either got to be sort of a brand exposition or, some kind of, storytelling moment. And maybe the sustainability and all that other stuff is that thing. But is that the best way of doing it? And the other key sort of function for a website, obviously, is a shop. So we were like, well, fuck it. We're just going to, if it's not like deriving revenue, then we're not going to do it. Which is not necessarily how we made every decision. It wasn't always about it being the most efficient, economized, revenue-driven decision-making. Sure. But we were like, this is what it's going to be. We don't have like time to sort of, write blogs and do all this other stuff. We're selling a product, but this website is going to exist. And it's going to be the most sort of simplified. Yeah, it's going to be a shop, and it's going to work really hard at being that. It's going to be a very good version of that.
So what was the first website you built? What did that look like?
11 and a half years ago at this stage. Like the focus wasn't on, having this really refined visual identity. And that was certainly in CPG, that was not the case. Like, you didn't have, like, it wasn't like you had to come out of the blocks with a new product, with a new brand, and it was like, looking and feeling like it was like $1 million. because that's not what was expected of CPG at that time. So with a website, I remember very well, we just came up with this little design, which was like these kind of square tiles. It was maybe 4 per row, and it was like you could click on them and it would take you to the product, and it was that. But it was kind of done in a...
Yeah, what color were the tiles?
We had a whole different brand identity, a visual identity at that time, certainly for the first 3 years.
Yeah, so take me to that first bit, then how did the brand metamorphise into sort of something?
Yeah. We were like a very kind of underground brand until we weren't. And people remember that happening, but they don't realize there was like 3.5, 4 years prior to that of us kind of working it out. But we were a cold brew company initially. And we used to brew cold brew I've got a photo of it somewhere. And this kind of really raw dog tank, this kind of black, farmer's tank. And it was like...
Where was it brewed?
Stoke Newington or Newington Green.
Yeah.
Church Walk. Hallowed ground. Really amazing for us, that little spot. And we had this, so cold brew, it was taking a cue from the US culture of cold brew, which had been bubbling up around that time as well, and has really kind of dominated and made a sort of... It's a permanent fixture now of coffee in America, not like in the UK where it never really kind of landed. But at that time, it was still kind of up for, it was potentially going to happen. So we wanted to be part of that. We wanted to make it happen. And there's a way of making cold brew, which I did do a bit of research on, and I met this kind of coffee nerd author to have a chat about it all, about sort of the fact that cold brew had this heritage in Japan, and specifically in Kyoto. And they have this kind of old, quite interesting, but not for now, story about how the Dutch and the Japanese would trade. And
so, what's the Dutch link to the...
Well, Dutch were coffee traders. And...
Really?
Yeah. So, and as I recall, and probably your audience will kind of be able to finesse this a bit more, but like, as I understand, as a non-historian, one of the major upsets of the kind of, of the era, 300 years ago, let's say, was the British Empire chopping up the Dutch sort of trade establishment by sort of turning it from a coffee trade into a tea trade. And that really kind of fucked up the sort of the Dutch ability to kind of dominate. Anyway, so they were doing this thing, they had these kind of roots and trade with Japan, and they were making coffee on board, and Japan would keep them offshore. So they would make cold brew. They would make coffee with cold water on the ships, and then that sort of methodology became adopted by the Japanese. But obviously, they just do it like a million times better than anyone, and whatever anyone does anything. And it became a style of making coffee, and coffee shops up and down this river in Kyoto would specialize in doing this. This is what I learned. Yeah, the river. This is the punchline. The river is called the Kamagawa, which means Duck River. And so in the process of coming up with our brand, really kind of the visual component of the brand, it was cold brew, and it had this link to Japan, which is sick. And then we had the ducks and the river. So the original, this is all kind of looping back around to that website. Amazing shout out to the best graphic designers in the business, Joe and Toby of Stevenson Edwards graphic design. And they collectively came up with this first visual identity, which we'll ping up on screen, or however you want to roll with that. We've got a visual of that for sure, which had very well depicted the river and the ducks of the Kamagawa. And it was cool as fuck. And it had this kind of retro Americana, Japanese sort of feel to it. And it was great. So the website used a lot of the palette and the color palette and some of the same kind of look and feel, but ultimately it was just like how do we ship a really kind of minimum viable website? How do we kind of get that into existence without it costing us time and effort and money? And so that's kind of what it was. And then, all of the rest of the brand was also completely undefined. And this is another question beyond the question. It was like, well, how do these brands come out? And I remember looking up to, sort of brands within our cohort of kind of new London-based sort of founder-led businesses.
What's one of those brands?
Like I mean, Sandals was a massive inspiration and massive competitor of ours. So big shout out to Hugh and Luke. Still love those guys. But I remember around that time we had Pip and Nut, and we had Moju, and we had a few brands that aren't around them more, like Doisy and Dam. And I know that you've mentioned Manny Life as a previous sort of iteration of your life, but plenty of brands around that time, and some of them very much still going. And I was always like, the question was like, how do they know? How do they know what to do? How do they know like what decisions to make this thing come out like looking and feeling like a complete thing? And because I just didn't know, we collectively didn't know how to sort of prioritize that, make that the thing that we spent our time working out. It became everything else. We also had this kind of, urgency or paranoia about like making sure that what did move the needle was selling rather than vanity. I'm not saying that visual identity is purely vanity, but like if you haven't got your shit together from a sort of commercial perspective, then a lot of things do start to feel a bit like surplus. And so we spent a lot of time focusing purely on that. And it was good that we did, because it took us a fucking long time to sort ourselves out sort of from a commercial perspective. But in that time, we did a really good job of learning how to do the thing and how to embed in community and leveraging the tribe of the coffee scene in London and broadly across the UK and Australia, to learn, iterate, develop new kind of ways of talking about what we did, understanding how to be more native with the coffee community, which is a community that we are somewhat native to anyway. But with respect to the business, how does the business show up in a way which is like, gonna not like, you walk in, you start talking to a barista who's like a coffee nerd. How do you kind of show up with a juice box carton of cold brew and sort of not be laughed out the door, basically? And so we had a long time.
How did you do that?
You got to remember, you got to learn what they care about. You got to learn about what they really need and want and care about.
Well, I think sorry to bounce off this, because it's what I say. It's like, I think most brands, the question beyond the question is most people will think, what do they care about? And then I think the better question is what do they really care about? Is this product, whether it's cold brew or oat milk, is this for a barista? That's kind of, is this what baristas care about? That's kind of the first question. And it's actually what do they really care about, and who is it actually the barista we're serving? And I think because your stuff was musicians, you figured out by asking more questions, it's not actually some gimpy nerdy barista, it's actually musicians who we're serving.
Well, sure. And I think that brands that have identified their sort of tribe of maybe it's a sales channel, and that's represented by a certain type of people. So a sales channel for us beyond online, beyond supermarkets, was obviously and still is a major part of what we do is coffee shops. And so what is or are the collective kind of tribes of people that are working out who they are and what, at a sort of at a macro level, what do baristas care about? And so you can sort of you can learn about that, but you're never going to. That's not the end. That's where a lot of brands will stop. And coffee adjacent brands, meaning coffee shop adjacent brands, which are brands that are selling their products to coffee shops for use within that space. So oat milks or snacks or coffee equipment like espresso machines and grinders and the cups and napkins, all this stuff. These are all brands that are trying to, and businesses that are trying to make them the chosen, product within a certain ecosystem. And for sure, learning about them at a macro level is useful. But the question beyond the question in that case is, but they're not baristas. Barista is what they show up and do when they're there. But these are people beyond that who have a bunch of other interests and desires and sort of identities. And is there anything at that deeper level which links them all together? Is there something about them as individuals rather than the job they do or their kind of their identity when they're being a unit of productivity in the world of commerce? Like, is there something that, is a bit more intrinsic to them as people, which is a further layer of kind of network or web that bonds them all together? And we did discover a few of those things.
So you found out a lot of them were like kind of into funk. They were musicians. They were like, as you were saying to me, they were musicians or actors or like creatives who were doing the coffee shop to kind of as a side hustle, whereas their real thing was trying to be a DJ or trying to be in a funk band or trying to be an actor. Like you tapped. What I loved about it is you almost went from so many brands are so heady. You know, you ask the first question, it's like the first question is we'll speak to people's heads. If you go a little bit deeper, you may, and some of these kind of good brands will get to people's kind of hearts. The great brands are like a tether to someone's fucking soul. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I think what you guys done, the question beyond the question, like, okay, baristas, if it's barista, you could do all the performance stuff. Like this oat milk is great for nitro brew. Like, cool, not really, but like the deeper you go, and then that's how it built all this, because all this shit, like even these inferior mugs, which for listeners, these are gorgeous I don't know, minor figures merch, but it's like I've never seen a brand mug like that ever. Like that's so weirdly unique and crazy, but like now it makes sense to me when you're saying, oh, this is who we're making it for, really. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think that we learned that in stages too. When you're doing something and you realize there's a bottleneck of brand activity between you and various other brands, because there's more than one oat milk and there's this one, and we're all trying to get in this one coffee shop. So we're all kind of fighting for that. It's like, well, we have to do something that's different than them. And the traditional thing to do, and Minor Figures does do a good job of this as well, is hosting entertainment, you know, just like winding down, having some beers, having some fun. That's a thing that we will bring in certain various kind of interesting and fun ways to the baristas. But, you know, dropping off swag and baseball caps and all this kind of stuff is a bit like, you know, it's very easy to treat merch like merch. It's a bit like, oh, I'll add it to the wall of tote bags I've got at home. So you ask the questions of what do they actually care and need, and it's not, you don't simulate this experience. You go and ask them.
So what would you go and ask?
You go and ask them like, what are the pain points?
You're down Kingsland Road in Hackney.
Precisely.
Go down there.
Yeah. Sit down with the barista and ask them what's a pain point for them? Like, what's a thing which actually bothers them not about their job, but what bothers them about the sort of, you know, what is intrinsic in the job that they're doing, which is a sort of an unresolved detail. And we had these ideas about like they're standing all day, and maybe what they need is like what if we branded and gave them like those soft pads that you put on the floor and you stand on them, and it makes it, when you're standing all day in front of a machine, like it makes it like more restful for your feet. And that was one idea. But we talked to a barista who said that, you know, when they're making coffee, and you'll see them a lot of the time, they'll grind the coffee into the basket and then they'll swipe it over with their finger. It's kind of maybe a bit more of an old school technique than it is now. But when you do that, over time, you know, the acid in the coffee, the ground coffee, starts to really corrode the skin. And so when barista was like, I get this, every barista's got like a green finger from where the skin's all falling off. So we like made a really nice oat derived like moisturizing balm, which was like so cool and cheap, and made in this little kind of slidey metal tin. So we even put a magnet on the back so it would stick on the coffee machine. And then we just had all of our sales reps would just have like a backpack full of like 300 of these things. And then, you know, every single time you set foot in a coffee shop, everyone's getting this little gift. And it's like, it communicates more than generosity. It communicates like, so we get you, we know what you're up to. We know like that you've got this sort of pain point in your career, in your profession. So that was like a sort of a learning, which then, you know, set the kind of the frame for that way of thinking about our brand. How do we show up in more valuable ways as a brand? And it just sort of validated.
What were some of those other ways you showed up, thinking about the musicians and stuff like that?
Yeah. So it validated this kind of idea, or not just that, but it was a further kind of step of acting in this way as a brand, which made us think that the question answering or asking was actually a really good way to continue. So, you know, another version of that, which is a project which I think was really, really cool. It was sort of a pandemic era musing. It was like I was spending a lot of time as everyone was kind of working from home, and I was doing a lot of listening to music and listening to the radio, specifically listening to like internet radio. And I was like, it'd be really cool. Me and Stu had a conversation about it, and it was like, we should start a radio station, which, you know, seems pretty left field for an oat milk company. But we sort of discussed, we spent a lot of time kind of trying to work out what it would mean if we did do that, and how it would work, and how do we populate the sort of the feed, or, you know, the content. How do we source the music, or the, you know, broadcasters, or whatever it would need in order to sort of be a radio station. And also how would it sort of play into the community and the tribe that we're sort of, that we care.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the point that you kind of touched on a couple of times is that we knew sort of anecdotally, but like through a process of being really up close to these people through selling and through just being around coffee shops, that, yeah, the baristas, I mean, some of them are like coffee professionals. Like that's their chosen career, and they'll go on and sort of rise the ranks. And there are lots of amazing people that have done that we know through the work that we've done. But majority of the time, you know, barista is not aspirational to be like the best barista, or like, you know, competitions, or just to sort of, you know, take it in a new direction, like own a coffee shop, or own a roastery, or do any of these kind of later stage kind of coffee career things. Mostly what they're up to is, you know, they're doing this job as a hospitality, and it's not just coffee, but hospitality in general. It's a really good place to work if you are a creative. It's, you know, you're flexible sort of schedules, and you can do your other thing whilst you do that thing. And certainly in the case of coffee shops, I suppose because coffee shops are, you know, morning and daytime, it means you're not going to, you know, have an evening shift. So it really is a nice place to do this kind of shift work if what you're doing on the other side is nighttime work, like music. And it was invariably the case that at least one, if not a handful of the people that we'd meet in these coffee shops, they're all musicians. So, and for whatever, you know, in whatever sort of shape that would take. So they're making beats at home, they're playing guitar, they're like, you know, in a band, they're doing whatever. And so again, well, if everyone, we've got this bottleneck situation again, if everyone's talking to baristas in the same way, then we have to come up with a new way of doing it. And what I know about these people beyond their sort of identity as baristas is that they have this other interest that they share, which is like so much cooler than coffee. Coffee's cool, music's cooler. If you disagree with me, I'll fight you. Yeah, music's the coolest thing in the world.
But also it's the universal language of the world.
Yeah, I mean, there's reasons for it, and that's one of them.
Other than football, probably.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it was about how do we sort of like harness people's joy for music. And this,
so what did you create with the Minor Figures FM? That was just to detail that, because it was sick.
Right. So we created essentially with the North Star of creating a radio station. We never actually made a radio station, but what we did create was a sort of a digital platform called Minor Figures FM. Find it at minorfigures.fm. And it has kind of dual function. One half of it is just sort of an archive. One other part of it, like a third and a half, 1/3 is the archive. Another third is a sort of a defunct or inactive live feed, which we fired up for various events, which I can get onto. And then the other bit is this sort of community mixtape network, which is a map of the entire world. And we had this cool little nifty back end where individuals from a coffee shop, representatives like a barista or an owner from any given coffee shop in the world. And it wasn't about stockists. It wasn't about representing minor figure stockists. It was just about showing that we were a sort of an ally to coffee shops and to baristas. It was about kind of giving them the aux cable in a way. And we created this platform where you could upload a playlist of your chosen music, and it could be as long or as short as you wanted, and a few other kind of little sort of, you know, captured details about the coffee shop and whatever. and it would populate on its own this map, which would pinpoint your coffee shop on the map. It would put you into the sort of the master list of coffee shops, and you can shuffle around it. And it would allow you to go and explore coffee shops and their music taste in Prague or Melbourne or London.
It's mad. Like you were showing me this book like earlier, man. It's sick, and it's almost like imagine Google Earth for hipsters.
Yeah.
Like, and you can zoom in and right, bang, they're listening to this. And again, I think music, and we'll get onto a music background. Like having that as a kind of a DNA in the brand is so interesting because music's a way we can communicate. Brands struggle to communicate, or humans struggle to fucking communicate. But music allows us it's the easiest way for us to connect. But it's such a clever way of selling in. You know, if you're going in with lip balm and MFFM, MMFFM.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, you're point of difference. And also you're not talking about like this froth fit better than everything else.
Right.
It's complete.
Look, I mean, that stuff's important too, but it's not the brand. I mean, it is the brand, but it's not the bit of the brand that you dwell on.
Stu always said to me, is like, our job is just to make the coffee. The coffee's the star of the show.
Exactly. It's all about the espresso, you know, the origin, the provenance. Like that's a big deal for coffee is like where it's from and how it's, you know, roasted and how it's treated.
Oat milk, yeah. Well, like as in you don't want to like it. That is the star of the show. The oat milk is kind of.
You absolutely don't want to fuck it up with oat milk.
Yeah.
Worst thing that you could do.
So on the stuff about so like I think it's really interesting going into, you know, when you're sort of saying to me like when you'd go in and sell into a new coffee shop, I'd love to know how you grappled in that sort of oat milk wars, you know, and won that because even today, you know, I seen that picture. So I'm in Nashville. We're in Nashville recording this. There's a coffee shop I walk into and there's Minor Figures stickers all over the coffee machine. And that became like a very common thing. Like, talk to me about how you won that fight right on the front line.
Yeah, interesting. Ultimately, I don't think we won the fight. I don't think we lost it. I just think it's one of these, initially, actually, there was this, it was a new category. Like oat milk when we launched oat milk, which became in around 2017, late 2017, we were still selling into coffee shops that didn't have oat milk. It didn't, you know, 2 or 3 years later, not even, there was no such thing. There was no such thing as a coffee shop that didn't have oat milk. So then it was about conversion. But really, that sort of, you know, the force of the category, the real kind of, you know, driving force behind the education and the universal sort of adoption of oat milk came from Oatly, which we really needed. Like we were a little, you know, unspoken, but we were sort of a little double act. Like we would be this sort of, you know, kind of this ballet of like a huge like juggernaut and this little kind of canary, and we were just like, or duck maybe, better choice of animal, but we had no way of competing with them on a large scale because they're so much bigger than us. But what we could do is we could join them in being a creative brand, which was different enough that people had something to choose from. But together we would drive this category forward.
Yeah.
And absolutely, like the people upstairs at Oatly knew this, and it was a very, you know, friendly, amicable thing. Not to say we didn't get into, you know, horns locking in certain moments, but that was kind of further downstream, like you say, at the store level. But what happened, maybe a slightly unintended consequence, was that it made oat milk a very tribal thing. So by nature, the fact that a coffee shop goes through like numerous cartons per day. And so
it was like supporting a football team of FMCG.
Totally.
Like, it was crazy.
Totally like a football team.
Yeah.
And you'd have all of your oat milks up on the back because they grab them, you know, every 20 minutes they're starting a new one. You know, coffee shops were kind of, it was less about, you know, I remember back in the day that you'd like see the A-frame board outside the coffee shop and it was like, we've got Aussie baristas. And that was like a huge selling point. Like we're not like that cafe because we've got these kind of, you know, really highly trained, like meticulous, specialized baristas. But then it came less about that and it became about the oat milk. it was like, this coffee shop is a Minor Figures coffee shop, or this one's an Oatly coffee shop. And it was like a bit, I didn't love that. I didn't love the fact that one brand was making it about them and the other brand was trying to remain this kind of support of coffee and the coffee community. But it did give us a point of difference. It allowed people really cleanly to see that we were trying to, embed with them and not make it about us. Whereas the other brand was like, it's all about us.
As an Oatly were.
Yeah. And look, I'm not trash talking no one. It was just a different strategy.
Yeah.
And
what do you mean? So their strategy was what?
Their strategy was more so their product, and their sort of a line of attack was like, it's about the milk and it's about oat milk. Like don't use milk, have oat milk. But also, go in and have oat milk and like and specifically Oatly. And they were, it just went down like that. But it had to go down like that because they were building the category. That's what their strategy required. We were not building the category. We were building this sort of
you're building another
category
brand
beneath. Yeah. We were doing this other thing. We were aiming to be like third place or second place at best.
Yeah. What's the so when you go into so you win a new coffee shop, because there was, appreciate like we're talking about you versus Oatly, but there was also another whole fucking line, almost like a Premier League 23 teams of other oat milk brands that were trying to get into those shops. What were you doing to defend your position? So I know you were saying like if you went into launched into a shop or it went live, you'd have to be there the next day in person.
Yeah,
like
we had to really defend it by showing up, because especially at the point of conversion, people would notice. Like regulars that would go in and get a certain oat milk in their beverage would really notice that if it changed one day to the next, that they'd notice, and it was a big deal to them. And so we had to stand ground by developing more interesting ways to connect with people. And so I think, people know about Minor Figures as this kind of community, forward brand that kind of thinks and performs in a certain way to, enable. It really comes alive in the real world, like as a brand. And that's because we had to be in people's minds. And brand, ultimately, when you get in that more sort of textbook kind of sort of thinking about what brand really is, it's like, it's about creating, it's like sort of on the one hand, it's creating memories. I want people to think of this when they encounter the brand. So how do we do that? And the other thing is just incepting ideas. So that like, it's not about an experience they've had that they've actually had. It's about them rolling up to shelf or encountering the social media or whatever, and it taking them to a place that they've actually never been to.
So talk me about this, what you almost want them to think, and then the inception of ideas, like go into examples of that.
Again, it's sort of, I think that the earlier commentary about the website kind of is true here as well. It's like what kind of, and we also talked earlier, like the other day, about maybe a sort of a genesis to this kind of way of thinking, at least for me. And I would, at this point, like the brand and the creativity of the brand was almost a fully democratized process. I already mentioned Joe and Toby. Obviously, Stu is a big part of this too. But we were getting like input from our forklift driver and the accountants. Like we were getting like really trying to understand how this brand should show up in a creative sense, sort of through all kind of people in the business. Yeah. So going back to the website kind of thinking and the sort of the asking questions, I think that a lot of that came from an experience walking down. I remember vividly taking, I think, like samples, like early doors, like year one, probably like walking from Bank to London Bridge, over London Bridge at rush hour, with some like samples in my hand like this, and being encountered by like a tidal wave of suits, like 8 wide on the pavement coming up the way from the train. And it was like very kind of vivid symbol of the fact that, I've made a life choice to start a company and do this. And they've all made a different kind of life choice, which is about going to Lloyd's.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was thankful in that moment. I was like, God damn, I'm going the right way. But it was also like, shit, this is the only way to do it. You have to go in the direction where everyone else isn't going. And it's not about being, it's not about defining your direction by other people's collective action of going that way. But it's more like, okay, if they're all going that way, the answer is not that way. So I have to go this way. And I don't need to know what the answer is. But if I go this way, at least I'm going to find some space and find some, creative space or just like mental space to sort of come up with an idea, which is going to have a little bit more freedom of like, band, like it's not going to be cluttered and difficult to land a communication. So back to the point, and then so I think a lot of our comms, certainly on social media and Instagram, became a vehicle for doing that, and our events too, whether that be a trade show or more of a sort of public-facing event. Like
so how would you do the events differently? But talk to me about when you get into that delta, that space. How did you come up with ideas?
Well, ideas and creative, and zoom out further, brand is in service to ultimately kind of the needs of the entire business, which is commercial. Ultimately, it's about solving problems most of the time, rather than staking a claim for who you are. It's about your identity is one thing, but how does your identity solve that problem over there?
Such as
claim, like, okay, so yeah, we've already talked about this, or we've talked about the bit right up to this point. So we talked about how when we would convert a coffee shop, the next day would be brutal because we'd have to defend our place, even though we've kind of had all these conversations with the head barista and the owner and like these commercials, like we've given them a better price, and they understand the kind of the indie nature of the brand and the company and the founders, and we're like just in East London, and like there's a lot about it, which is like they would never stock like Hovis. They would stock the local sourdough. So we were the equivalent of that. So it's like we had all these, we had this great currency on our side to help us kind of win. But ultimately, a lot of the time we'd convert, and then the next day we get complaints from the barista saying, or the owner saying it's gone fucking terrible because everyone's come in and they want Oatly or they want a different one. One of the very specific differences that people were commenting on was the fact that when they had a latte or whatever flat white with minor figures versus Oatly, they were having an experience which was more acidic, and that's because they were. And the reason they were is because the oat milk wasn't hiding the flavor of the coffee. There was a masking that happened in certain other oat milks, and there was a lack of masking that was intentional about what we were doing, because it's much more like, again, about the coffee. We want to be able to taste origin characteristics, but guess what? There's like fucking loads of acid in coffee. And that's what they're tasting, and they're not used to it. So we were like, that's a good thing that they're tasting the acid, but how do we communicate that? How do we communicate that in a way which people will agree? It's not just us pushing back on some feedback. It's actually us going, yeah, you're right, and this is the reason why, and you should like that. And so how do you get them to reimagine that experience that they think they don't like, but how do you make it into an experience that they do like? And that they crave?
What did you guys end up doing?
We came up with a campaign. So this is what I'm saying. So brand becomes, it's briefed. This is it. Like the impossible. Change people's minds. Like change their complaint into a thing that's good. Like a sort of a trait of our brand and our product that is like really cool and a positive. So you set brand, the function of brand, you set them this conundrum, this riddle to solve, and you come up with creative ideas which do as best they can a job of solving that, rectifying that, and then distributing those creative ideas through your various touch.
What were some of the ideas you came up with to solve it?
We did
thing.
We did a campaign which had this really cool live, like in real life component, which we were going to broadcast we were going to do it at Coffee Festival 2020, April 2020, which we never did do because of COVID. But we had this whole other kind of digital component that we did run, and the campaign was high on acids, and it was very intentionally, overtly leaning into psychedelia as a way of celebrating acid. And the digital component was cool as fuck. We had, I think you actually still can go and play this online too. We made like a latte art simulator where you do it with your finger on the phone or the mouse on the computer, and you could pour, latte art into a cup, and it would like come up with these super rad, like trippy colors, and you could save your designs, and you could post them, a little kind of UGC kind of spin-off from that too.
Yeah.
And the bit I think was the most genius that we never actually got to do because of the timing with the pandemic was at Coffee Fest. We'd planned to do a thing where we'd broken all of the individual acids in coffee into their sort of individual types. All the names kind of
Sure.
They leave me now, but we created blotting paper.
What's blotting paper?
Blotting paper, like sort of absorbent paper.
Yeah.
Which is perforated into tiny little squares, which is the classic kind of acid tab.
Right.
And we would soak each of these pages into the individual acid compounds that are found in coffees.
Yeah.
So that you could come to our stand and you could taste all the different acids by taking a tab and putting it on your tongue.
Yeah.
You're dropping acid, but you're actually just dropping like, mundane acid that's in coffee. And you be able to, and we were celebrating it. We were making it into a fun experience. Come and try these acids.
Yeah.
Come and wear the high on acid shirt or hat. And know that that's not a mistake or a bug. That's a feature of it.
Yeah, fucking genius. Do you, and we don't have to talk about this, but like I feel like, when the Beatles went through their acid period, their creativity went fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, was there a lot of people in the brand that were not like on acid the whole time, but they had that psychedelic experience? Because I feel like that did play into the brand on a big level.
I mean, totally, dude. You should have seen me in 2020. I was like, I had a beard down to here and long hair and orange glasses.
Yeah.
I was looking at photos on my phone of myself, not within vanity. I was looking for something in particular, but I was like, I couldn't believe how gnarly I looked back then.
Yeah. But like, as in terms of it, like being, because being an explosion in terms of creativity, like I feel like it helps you access another part of And if as you said, like I feel there was this kind of almost again like that feeling of Woodstock in the 60s, that kind of like there was that kind of element of FMCG, obviously not to that same level, but there was this movement. Everyone was like, and maybe it was because everyone else had some nerd from fucking Mars who was running their ship.
Yeah, I
mean, who plays hockey in Herne Hill, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think you guys were like, we're just going to just do this. And if I'm being honest, when I went into Coffee Festival, it was a complete acid trip because I used to do Store Supply, which was obviously you guys.
I'm sure we met then.
Yeah, we probably have maybe even met, but like pre this trip. But it was like, I feel like this stand you're basically walking through an acid trip. So how would acid, not necessarily like, again, we can take this out, right? But like, how would that inform you guys as a creative team? Was it just allow you to think differently, or when you took acid with loads of ideas come to your head of like, because mate, that idea of FM is wild. The idea of like turning the acid into what was it called, that campaign? The
High on Acid.
Like, this is crazy shit, bro. Talk me through that.
You have to get inspiration from something other than the category or the industry that you're in. As a whole, FMCG, CPG, both in the UK and in the US, still, even though we've got like, ubiquitous sort of, the standard of graphic visual identity and design that goes into CPG now is obviously really like a lot higher than it ever used to be. But even that now has become a normal.
Oh yeah.
Like you can't launch a product unless it's got like this fucking smooth, cool looking logo and amazing.
Well, also like now everything's a pastel color now.
Everything's something.
Yeah.
Everything's nothing. There's nothing like that's not like, refined and really well put together. So if all you do is get your inspiration from, that other brand that launched and I'm going to, riff on that. And, I know that talking to agencies and people just, that I meet that, people encounter me and they say that they love minor figures and they say that, you know, you were in all of our mood boards. It's like, that's cool, but you're going to just create more and more. You're going to create a sort of a slightly like empty, hollow version. It's going to look cool, but is it going to have any of the stuff? And we got none of our like inspiration from within.
So where would you, between you, Stu, and was it Johnny? Yeah. Johnny, we're like, and just the team, like, I love the idea of democratization.
Well, that's one way of doing it. So you get ideas from people who were not like here to come up with ideas.
Any specific examples of that?
I remember that our great and powerful Jimmy Wise, who ran our production, we had in-house production for, you know, brewing for, you know, all the time. We were, you know, up in Walthamstow. And he came up with some like crazy ideas about what we should make, not because he was thinking about it commercially or because he was thinking about it in terms of, you know, what would work, but just like he had these ideas about sort of products that we should make and things that we should do. And I mean, the other thing you got to know is like ideas and creativity is like the killer metric for creative people and creative entities and businesses and brands is not about having good ideas. It's about having lots of ideas. It's about coming up with, you know, if some brand's coming up with 2 ideas and they're shipping both of them, I can guarantee that they're probably bullshit. But if you come up with 100 and you're shipping one of them, then there's a reason that one.
Yeah, volume of ideas, 1,000. Yeah, that's one of my big principles.
But nonetheless, the ideas that don't make it aren't wasted moments. They're all there to inform everything else. And you come up with an idea in, you know, 1 year, let's say you come up with an idea and it's like not going to fit. And then but you've got it. You've got this whole catalogue of ideas.
That's what I was saying to Will Goddard yesterday. Is a kernel of, in every bad idea is a kernel of a good idea. Is what he was saying, what they'd applied to restaurants. So yeah, what were some of those?
Well, I remember...
James, you said, who was the guns?
Yeah, James.
Yeah.
He came up with an idea to make like potato milk, because we were talking about other kind of sustainable crops. Like, it's not going to go back towards almond milk. We know that one's done. It's not going to get to soy milk. It's cutting down the rainforest. Like, what's better? What can we do which is like oats, which is not oats? And it's like potato milk. And it was like, it didn't make any sense. Like, it was completely like stupid and wild. But lo and behold, we didn't do it, but some other people did. Like, it was, you know, just an example. But the inspiration comes from anywhere, comes from anyone. And you know, people that like tripping on psychedelics, sure. I don't know that's a way to come up with actual ideas, but it certainly is a way of making your, you know, altering your perspective, like turning the object around to have a look at it from the other side. But I know that we love getting inspiration from non-food and beverage.
Such like what categories? Like
skateboarding brands are the coolest, and they've always been the coolest.
Yeah.
Since before, like in the 90s, like, you know, these brands doing crazy and cool shit, like, and just coming up with like just swaggy ideas. Like, and I mean, like, just ideas that bring with them like energy and weight. I think that, you know, the same could be said of like liquid death these days. Like, they don't exist in CPG. They exist as some other thing. And it's very evident in their media.
Also, what I love, mate, is your point of having brand as a way to solve a specific problem. Are there any other examples of using the brand and the kind of the you know, the acid trip ideas that are coming into this kind of fucking like organism? You know, that's what I feel like. That's what I always felt. It was almost this creative organism that was in East London that was just like throbbing. Yeah. And then you basically say, right, this is a specific problem downstream. Let's go upstream to brand to this weird like, and then like boom, like any examples on that?
Our approach to out-of-home advertising was absolutely kind of this process, which was, we fought quite hard, you know, not like we fought with each other, but we really kind of, sometimes we did actually, but we would have these battles between the kind of the ideal ideological, like what we want to do as a, you know, a creative brand, you know, the brand solving the problem thing, with like the commercial team that wanted to put like claims, like product claims.
Or like available in Tesco's or...
Either on at home, actually, and I'm also thinking that on the packaging as well, just to do this thing. And it's like, the more you do that, yeah, I get it. Like saying that it's, you know, vegan or gluten-free or, you know, whatever, like no added sugar or whatever the thing is, kind of useful and so on. But if you're building a brand, like, you know, I'm not suggesting anyone actually tries to do this, but if you build a brand that is supported off the kind of the DNA and the crazy ideas of the people that were building minor figures, then you're going to dilute that. If you start acting all of a sudden in year 8, like, or whatever, you're going to start putting like, you know, these little packaging claims on. And no doubt we did actually do it at a certain point, but we kind of wrestled with that thing very hard. And like a lot of our best at-home campaigns, to loop back around to that, were these just like nonsense, like art things. They didn't tell you what to do or even what the product was or where to get it. It was just like a cool
Didn't you
thing.
have one that was just like completely white? Didn't even have a pack shot on it or anything, and just said minor figures. Or it might have had like half the duck's head.
Yeah, we had a whole load of campaigns that that again executed by Joe and Toby, then the campaigns that were like, you know, we did like a warped thing where I think we did like a trade, maybe a coffee festival that you might have been to, opposite store supply, where we had these kind of hemispherical, like you know, convex, like mirror balls on the wall, and it was like this crazy thing that you made, you know, it was like a hall of mirrors or whatever. But we built an entire campaign, like an at-home campaign, that we had this kind of hall of mirrors sort of energy to it as well. And it's just like on a bus stop, and it has like a picture of the oat milk, but the oat milk is like completely sort of distorted in a way which makes it unrecognizable. Apart from the fact there's enough like of the brand, like the visual DNA sort of apparent, you kind of know what it is. Joe and Toby had this idea of making the character on the front of the packaging.
Is that that's Penny?
Penny.
Yeah.
Into a meme, like propagate the meme. Let's just make that image like old school memes, like, you know, just sort of, I don't mean like the caption memes, but just literally just make it into an entity which is repeated. Like it shows up everywhere all the time. Stickers, lapel pins on the packaging, like whatever. Just like just make it like a pop art.
Yeah. Sick.
Like
sick.
Token, just something that just is everywhere. Because then you can distort it, and then you can do like, you know, the wheat postings, and all it is just that one thing, and it's not even, people don't even know what the brand's called. Like they say, which one, minor figures, is that the one?
Yeah. Even like when I was out here, those bars, because but as soon as I show people minor figures, they've
seen that thing.
They know exactly what the fuck. Yeah.
So then actually, that's all you're doing. Then is you're just trying to create this. This like, yeah, kind of Andy Warhol sort of just mass-produced sort of art, everywhere, and it happens to be oat milk.
Yeah, mate. It's such a beautiful way of doing it. Take me into sort of the creative battles between, you know, yourself and Stu, and not just Stu, but and Johnny or any of the creative team, because I feel like as the brand scales, so I was speaking to Will about yesterday, scale kills magic. Like as you get bigger, you know, you have to wrestle with those things. Like, talk me through some of those battles, or because there'll be a lot of people listening to this who like.
Yeah. Ultimately, the battle almost always boiled down to ideas not being. They're like half baked ideas, skimmed milk ideas. Like they're not
skim milk ideas. Yeah, that's beautiful. Like any examples of that?
We tried not to have them. We tried not to ship them. Like things that were like, you know, execution. Ideas are not as, you know, don't land unless the execution is world class. So the battles were about, you know, is it high enough? Like in terms of, does it reach our like idea internally, our ideas of what's good enough to do?
That's what I was trying to ask you, is like, what would be your litmus test?
We don't have age, but it's like, it was kind of gestural, as much as it was
gestural, as in like
it was these litmus tests. It wasn't like codified.
Yeah. No, I don't mean it. I'm not asking for a codified thing. Was it? But would you have to be like, that's a fuck yeah or no?
It's kind of like we had this thing about vibrations. Like,
is it your excitement?
Does it create vibrations? Like
Sick.
How do you kind of measure that? Like when you do have a scaled business and you have, regional, as we had UK, US, us, with three kind of distinct teams of like, we had like over 100, 100 and something people when I left the business. And it's like, you've got all these like marketing teams and people that need to sort of, take the random abstract kind of
the vibration
kitchen like back and forth ideas that we were just having, and the work that goes out there and actually deliver it on the other side of the world, and
measuring ideas.
So conversations we'd have with like various sort of commercial teams on the other sides of and other teams were like, well, how do we do it? And it's like, well, we need to sort of try and have ways of measuring vibration, and that's what I mean. It's like, it's a bit gestural. It was kind of, we had ways of doing it, but it was more of a feel at times.
So what would be an example of a real great vibrations idea? And what would be an example of like a meat vibrations idea?
I think that the best signal that you've hit vibrations is when people are getting your brand tattooed on their bodies, which happened, I mean, no exaggeration. It probably happened like 500 times. Like we got sent like either tagged in or whatever, like people's ink of like whatever, not even just like the penny thing, but like all kind of different bits of the brand were like sort of people tagging themselves with it. It's crazy to me. I don't have any minor figures ink.
But I mean more. I feel like that's a great way
of be crazy.
Having like knowing how the vibrations of the total brand. But I mean specifically, like if we go into the ideas room of like what's a high vibrations idea, what's a kind of low vibrations idea, because I think that will help people assessing.
Don't know. I think that like if you've ever spent any time in performance, show business, anything like that, this is an instinct that you have to get very good at judging for yourself. Because you'll be playing, I'm speaking as someone who has, prior to Minor Figures, earned a living playing music in all kinds of different contexts. But, small stages, big stages, whatever, like different things. But you have to have a sense of feeling, and you have to ultimately develop a sense of taste in what you're doing, that you think, if this is working for me, then it's working for them. DJing is a lot like that. What song are we going to play next? I know what I would like to play next, but is that going to clear the dance floor? And over time, you develop a sense for your taste being the sort of the instinct that you need to listen to. Like if it could go that way, I would you maybe shortlist. I've got this idea, and this idea. But if I do that one, then that's going to mean this. If I do this one, it's going to be something slightly different. So we'll go with that. Because I know it's going to make me have the right response for this moment in the performance. And so we'll do that. And that then becomes, I think, an instinct that you sort of dial in over years of doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
To the extent that you can have the same sort of attitude towards a creative idea in
brand building.
Yeah, brand.
It's Nils Leonard who runs on Uncommon Agency. I don't know if you've seen all the that BA campaign when it was just like through the window. You saw that that's his agency. And Toby Duncan, who's the brand strategist for Bold Bingo. He's been working with me on where we're trying to take this fuck out, and it's really interesting. But one of Nils's things is taste can't be taught, but it can be kind of developed through obscurity of sources or like originality of sources. So it's kind of like, looking at weird stuff, but you've got to, and again, that's what John Haggerty was saying to me, is like taste and point of view really kind of it's kind of one of the intangible things, That's super interesting.
Because the battle, just to answer your question, the battle is between that way of thinking and doing versus the sort of the data, which is what your classic and as they should, but your classic marketer or more so performance marketing, if you have someone in your team like that, then they need to be like just data like obsessed. And maybe there's a way of kind of correlating the abstract with the data and giving you some.
Do you guys have a performance marketer in house?
We didn't have like a proper like D2C performance marketer, but we did have very like traditional, trade marketers who read, spreadsheets for fucking fun.
Was that how did that tension manifest?
We'd scrap it out until we get to unity. And sometimes, it's always a give and take. You can't do everything one way or the other.
What's things like? What's the give and take on that?
Well, I don't know. Like, if you're, is the purpose of this exercise to, tell a story, or is it to like win in Tesco's? Like, for a moment.
It goes back to what you're saying, defining what the problem is and then unleashing brand.
Yeah. Brand, it's in service. Yeah. So, if it's like, but that, it's not clean though. It's never just like sort of an easy, if you turn it around, you decide you've got a way of thinking about sort of decisions and problems by, what sort of outcome are we aiming for here or whatever. And you can do that, but ultimately there's no clean, just every time approach that we landed on. Like, and I suppose that's what, again, it's this kind of lightning in a bottle sort of component of the team, the people, the moment, the product, the category, the sort of the wind in the sails or the lack of, like what is happening, which helps you kind of decide any given moment that you're going to draw the line here between data and abstract, and you're going to make a decision that's that one. How do you know?
What are the hardest obstacles you faced? And again, I love this idea of brand as in service. How did you use brand as a kind of a battering ram through that kind of boulder of obstacle?
I think it's like, and this is not, I'm not coining this by any means, but people talk about brand as moat, brand as the distinction. And you can, when you look at your business and your product as in its entirety, your product or products, different SKUs, different, maybe buckets, like different ranges within your offering, will have some kind of, I do believe there's no IP in CPG. There's nothing really to protect. There might be some kind of method that you don't tell anyone about, but like
people catch up. I think everyone started doing deep roast peanut butter, because that was a mistake.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
There you go.
But
you can't
everyone
started these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and you might be on the one end of the spectrum where there's like a complicated, product or process or ingredient panel, which means mystifying that through, comms, not mystifying it through comms, but like not revealing how you do that is one way of kind of putting yourself further down the spectrum of like simplicity there in a more complicated manner. And then you've got other products, through to single ingredient products like fucking sugar, flour, whatever, butter, which is like, there's not many secrets there. Like anyone could just pick up the pack and just retro engineer that product. And so again, it's like a brand in service. Like, what are you trying to do? Like what does your brand have to do because of where you find yourself along that spectrum? So wherever you find yourself on that spectrum between complicated and less easy to sort of retro engineer through to sort of completely obvious one ingredient product, perhaps, the brand is doing something there. And, it might be, on this end of the spectrum, it might be kind of a simpler storytelling methodology because the product is protecting a lot of the outcome. But over here, and oat milk is much nearer that end. There's no secrets in oat milk formulation, really. Not least because it's on the back of the packaging. But like the difference between all these barista oat milks is 1% of ingredients. And so it's clearly not that. The difference between the brands and the success of these products is clearly not that. It's to do with sales, how your go to market and your strategy and your aggression within sales. And in the minds and sort of, more abstractly, the brand is this thing that if you do it well enough and distinctly enough, then it becomes a moat. It becomes a sort of a huge gap between you and the opposition or you and the competition, which means they can't do what you can do. And the more that you build out ideas and programs and principles like radio websites and the rest of it, the more the things that you do within your sort of moated area brand become things that even if they could try and do it, ain't gonna do it. I mean, the most kind of top of mind example of that at the moment is Graza olive oil. Like every single olive oil that you can possibly imagine has folded into at least squeezy bottles.
Yeah,
but no one gives a fuck, right? No one cares. They don't want that one because
good fat's the OG.
Good fat.
Is it good or not good fat?
Good Graza.
Graza, sorry, is the OG.
Yeah, no one gives a fuck about all of the other squeezy bottle things unless you're not in America. But like, if you're in America, yeah, of course.
Well, is this the Graza dominates America?
Dominates.
I've
heard recently that they took the pantry staple rate of sale per store per week kind of exists within the 1.5 to 2.
Mate, but that goes back. Sorry, you're gone. Sorry.
1.5 to 2 units per store per week in pantry staple, and on the grapevine, but I've heard numbers up in the sort of 20s.
But it also goes back to your principle of like asking the question beyond the question. So like, again, surface level, olive oil is just olive oil. Like cooks use it at home. Do you know what I mean? Well, actually, like who's the home cook is probably their aspirations or the real diehard foodies. This is when you're at the early adopter stage, are people who like either worked in kitchens, those are kind of your baristas, or that they're watching cooking videos, and everyone there watching cooking videos, you squeeze olive oil. And actually the feeling, and again, it's a real sort of just very small thing, but I think all the small things will add up to the big things. The feeling of squeezing olive oil into a pan, you become, have you read the Story Brand, that book? About becoming, about how the brand, great brands help you become the hero of your own story. And so if you're trying to be an aspirational chef and suddenly you're like squeezing with that bottle, like you feel...
I see.
Do you see what I'm saying?
It goes the same thing as the website. I mean, our website sort of example is obviously very low impact comparison to what they've done with olive oil. But like, you show up and you go, why the fuck is everyone doing it like this? Why does everyone put it in a glass bottle and make it look premium? Even the cheap ones try to look premium. And why don't you do the other thing? Why don't you just take the mid kind of olive oil? I don't think anyone would be offended if I said that. It's just like, it's not fancy. It's just like the basic. It's the same as the other one that costs $15. But as UX, it's like it's improving the experience of using that product, and it's understanding what people actually need it to do in the kitchen, which I think is the key.
But also the sizzle versus drizzle. Have you seen that? They're two SKUs. There's one sizzle.
Yes.
Which is fucking, and then one's drizzle, so like one's for like dressing.
That's right.
Whether that's complete and utter bollocks is up to you. But you basically double the spend, because you'll get one diehard fan who's like, well, I need one for cooking, I need one for salads and dressing.
Well, of course, because the thing
you basically double the spend per.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. When you get into that, because what you're doing is you're trying to recalibrate people's expectations and sort of, if they buy a fancy, $20, $30, $40 bottle of olive oil, it'll sit on the counter for a year before you finished it, because it's like a special occasion thing. So it doesn't work. A scaling brand in staples, like pantry staples, doesn't have the luxury of presenting themselves as a luxury, because you rate a sale. So you need to make it a thing that people are not afraid to just pick up and use buckets of it. Anyway. I digress. I'm not a sort of an expert within the staples.
No. But I think that's interesting. Is helping people go through usage occasions.
So exactly, and then storytelling is how you do that. How do you latch on to what kind of story and people tribe out in the world, whether it's kind of influencer cooks and chefs and whatever. Like how do you do that in a way which means it supports it supports the behavior trying to get out of your customers? How do you make it so that people go, oh yeah, well this is like, I usually use the $7 like olive oil, but I'm going to use my like, $15 one, but I'm going to use it like on everything all the time, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Then it's like you've done it, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
That's the cool kind of challenge. That's brand in service to an outcome. Absolutely.
Brand service. So you talk about liquid death. We're obviously recording this in Nashville. I think you've got a really interesting perspective, mate, because you were in London for a long time, went to New York, you're now in Nashville, for being here for 3 days, I would say it's just a massive culture shock. Like, it's the Oscar Wilde quote, which we're two nations divided by a common language. It's so fucking wildly different. And I feel like people have this misconception of America, and I certainly did before coming here, of like, oh, it's just New York and LA is America. It's like, that's what you get on social media, and it's so far from the truth. The guy, Ryan, the other guy I was having a few pints with, he was like, New York is closer to London than it is to Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, New York's not really America.
So why do you think so many British brands just completely tank it over here? Love to explore that. Why did you think Liquid Death booted off here but completely bombed in the UK? Like, it's just, I don't understand, because again, it's like, on paper, it should, and maybe there's a misconception here, but with the fact that because our greatest export is creativity, and we have all these pop stars that make it big in America, like, we kind of think that we're just so similar.
I mean, the reason that brands do or don't make it over here, like, I don't think it's really sort of, I don't think it's got simply anything. I mean, maybe it's a mixed, a blend. You've got cultural literacy. You've got like the ability to communicate in ways that people are expecting to be spoken to, especially by a brand. Like, Americans love a winner. They love a winner, and they're very sort of like dismissive on even the nice Americans. They don't understand people that are like, oh, just, trying to do my best. It's very English energy. Like, that doesn't work for American folks. They just don't know how to grasp it and hold it and make sense of it, because they're so used to being bombarded by like the best. Yeah, this is the best fucking, and whatever. This is the best. It's the, the.
I know what you mean. I know exactly.
And then, and that doesn't mean you just got to show up and claim that you're the best. It just means that you got to know that there are differences, and then probably that leads you to sort of asking a lot of questions about what that means for you in your own sort of journey with a brand, with a product, with a category. And the other thing which is just different in a way which I don't think you can understand until you come here. So this maybe would be like sort of a little like calling card, both in the brand sense, but also in the other kind of components of what I do these days with brands. I've had various projects, go-to-market projects with UK brands that are coming over, just to help them understand what the fuck's going on. Because the supply chain and like the size of it and the way that you unlock regions of distribution is just like nothing doesn't work the same. Like in the UK, you have someone on the team has a direct relationship with the buyer at that supermarket, and that's just not how it works.
How does it work here?
There are in betweens. You got brokers, you got merchandisers, you got all these various kind of tiers of distribution that all kind of are interfacing with each other as well, and it just means that what you're trying to do commercially is just much less straightforward than folks in the UK who've done really well with retail. Maybe they're sort of a very well established brand and people's like a household name brand. And if someone really is native to the system over here, then and I would not call myself native to it, but I'm certainly kind of near enough to it to understand that certain things are going to get you into a bit of hot water. Just doing it differently. So what I do now, a little bit of that, but a lot of it is really kind of the brand sort of translation.
So how if Mind Figures is this cool, crazy, hypnotic, psychedelic brand, like, I think if you were to bring that base of people I've met over here with this winner's mindset, I mean, I find it hilarious. Like, we're driving along the road and like everyone's got a picture of themselves. It goes, "Don't sell without the intel." And I'm like, it's just, and even like, mate, when I went to the salesmanship the salesmanship here is so encouraged. Whereas if you did it in the UK, you'd be like, they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing, mate?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's what I was speaking to, did you meet Nate, the English broker? Yeah. And so I went for lunch to Cafe Rose the other day, banging, which is kind of a cool hipster, would fit in very well in East London.
Sure would, yeah.
But even there, she's like, "Hello, sir, how are you?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And she goes, "I'm gonna," and she was like, "You need to get this." And then she gave us a wonderful sales pitch, poetic, high energy. And before I know it, I spent 15 quid on a fucking lemongrass and turmeric bone broth.
I love it, dude.
But it's amazing. But
I
as
love
in, like,
being salty.
yeah. And then with the sandwich, I was like, hook, line, sinker. But I love that. I like sales. I think it's beautiful. They see it more like an art form here, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, we sort of see it as like don't sell.
Yeah, it's considered a little bit edgy to be like that in the UK. I think that Minor Figures was.
Yeah. How did you with that cultural backdrop? How did you kind of navigate that?
Well, culturally we're not very English. Like the individuals in the brand, like Stewie and Johnny are both Aussie, and so they've got similarities with the UK folks, but like not really. Like they've got a much more sort of,
But yeah, would you say the Aussies like winner brands?
Don't know. I'm not super sure, but I just know that our energy and certainly the culture that we developed, from the very beginning at Minor Figures through to, now, is one that takes selling to be very, fundamental. Like you can't assign commercial success to social media. You can't likes and follows and so on don't equal.
I think this is fascinating because I think there's probably not misconception, just a perception of the brand that it was this, it is this wonderfully creative. But I love the fact that there's actually behind that is this relentless, like, go out and sell.
I would say foremost is this like just ravenous, like, disciplined attitude towards getting the product out there. And it's not.
What was the strategy like?
Knocking on doors. Yeah. Just like it's not even clever. It's just like getting, especially when you're talking about coffee shops, like they're all there and you're meeting pretty much.
What were you and what were you and Stu doing in that first 6 months?
I was riding my bike around the East End, dropping off samples. Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't the first 6 months, it was the first like 4 years. And you can learn a lot of lessons about the people and the way that they make decisions and so on and so on and so on. But ultimately, nothing about either retail or coffee channels. There's no better way of selling than just rocking up and talking to them.
What are the other cultural? So that sales approach basically worked here because when you're going into commercial conversations, they like that whole like kind of we're the winner, like, and Stu's kind of. He's a very impressive guy, right? You meet him and he's very convincing. Like, he's a great set. He could sell fucking ice to an Eskimo, right?
I've seen him do it.
Yeah. Like, and I would back myself to that. It'd give me something to sell. I'd be able to sell most things to most people, right? Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like so he would have that energy going over here. Like, how would that? I'm just trying to really understand how the brands worked over here because
it honestly, like the US team is amazing.
Yeah.
We've been, on a journey, like in terms of shaping it and working out how to.
Where is it based from? New York or LA or?
Well, satellite for the most part, but a lot of the main sort of energy, like leadership energy, happens more on the West Coast. We have a great team over in California. The wonderful Melissa Hauser, president based in Colorado. We have a lot of operations that happen up in Chicago because we have co-packing just over the border in Canada there. But then we have awesome sort of regional sales like everywhere we go. But the thing is we don't have field sales, in certain kind of situations, everyone's kind of out there knocking on doors and meeting people. But because we rely so much we can't have like the number of people that you would need to cover all the territories.
So like, how many states are you in out of all of them?
I mean, I can't say for sure. I mean, I could call up Gio on the West Coast, shout out Gio and just find out from him. But there's a good chance we're in Alaska and Idaho for all I know. But I couldn't tell you for sure. But yeah, we're definitely like.
And do the regional managers understand the nuance of that? Because again, like what Nate was saying to me is like, mate, you go from Nashville to Charlotte.
Yeah,
which is kind of he goes they're both southern states. But still very wildly different ways of viewing the world. Like this is what's blowing my mind since being here is it's like I almost compartmentalize like this America into like New York, California, like the East Coast, West Coast, and then kind of South. But the nuance between each state, what I'm learning from these guys who've, bouncing around, Ali was saying that he's on a flight to a different.
I think the thing that matters the most is it is regional, but it's not so much the nuance of the culture. It's more so like selling is, your success in selling is directly correlative with the depth of your network. Like, and if you, and selling therefore is kind of this embedded, like, feet on the ground thing where you have to have relationships with maybe not lots of people, but certainly certain strategic people. You have to have them close by. So when you're hiring people in sales, that's the thing that you're expecting them to bring is like, not just, hey, sell me this pencil, but it's like, who do you know? Like, how are you actually going to do this? And we give you the materials and the samples and whatever, and you're going to go out and start doing it. What are you going to do? Who are you going to talk to? When is it? How long does that whole thing take? And like, when are we going to start seeing results?
I think commercially, network is a moat. Like, you're talking about brand as a moat.
Right.
And so there's a really good book by a guy called David Cleveley, who owns Bocca di Lupo in Soho. Like, really successful guy. And he's got a book called Serendipity. It doesn't happen by accident. And his whole thing, it was like talking about the networks of during the Industrial Revolution, like how that kicked off in the UK first. So we had all these networks of linking things together. And I feel like, when I think it's interesting, like networks always is never really on the list, with like things that like, I did this, I don't think building out a network is so important. You know what I mean?
And it's also a skill in its own. Like, it's not like about adding people on LinkedIn. It's about having, relevant experiences.
Yeah. And I think I think what you're saying there about when you're hiring people is having like an actual network.
Yeah.
Like friends. Do you know what I mean? Because people who come to job interviews probably go like, oh yeah, I've got a great network.
Well, I mean, it's so much easier to, people buy from people.
Yeah.
Right. And, meaning humans, meaning people with actual experiences in lives, AKA friends and mates and so on. Yeah. I mean, it's so much easier, or rather it's so much harder for someone to tell you no when they care about you. And there's no doubt. And this, we had these experiences within, sort of the kind of the ecosystem of London coffee shops, which is whereas like, that coffee shop is like the guy, the individual, not even the owner, just like one of the baristas is like flatmates with the Oatly rep or something. And it's like, that just means that's buttoned down. Right.
When
it's like locked.
With stores, we used to work with Martin. Do you remember Martin, the guy covered in tattoos, really sound geezer, but he was a barista. And like, again, I think the other thing with sales, which is again what Mark Palmer at Corson Press taught me, is like hire for channel. So, and the reason, like, basically Martin walked in looking like he was a barista. As soon as he walked in, he's like, I speak
barista.
Yeah, I speak barista. Yeah, it's kind of a thing.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
And it's, whereas they've sent in some sort of, I don't know, Nor's marathon runner influencer, like, you know what I mean? Which they, so many business, like, think about who is our customer? How do we mimetic that? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
What else shocked you about, or has shocked you about America? Like,
and the ambition to achieve and to create is no different than it is here than it is in the UK. But in the UK, there are these like complicated like social layers of interaction where the vicar. I mean, admittedly, not an English reference, but there's that yes, no.
A Vic of Dibley.
Yeah.
That's my mate's great uncle. That's so wild. Like, yeah, he's dead.
That's the thing.
He's bare old. He was bare old, but like...
Yeah, super old. But like, that thing is like totally like an English...
What do you mean by that? Like, the yes...
Like you're talking to someone,
yeah,
like perhaps in a sales situation, but not necessarily. And there's like all this kind of, yeah, awesome, yeah, wicked, yeah, send me some information, yeah, whatever. And then it's like, time to like close this down. It's like, nah.
Yes.
And it's like, they don't do that here. It's like, it's much more like, yes, usually means actually, it's in the direct, it's a constructive step in the direction of the solution or the resolution. And no means no. And it's like, I'm still confused about, when I'm having those conversations with like, folks in the UK, I'm like, it's still like, I just don't know how to fucking, decipher it. So doing business here is kind of a joy because it's just like, it's more literal. It's just less coded and complicated and less kind of, there's less kind of sarcasm and nuance and sort of, all that stuff going on. And that's a good thing if what you're trying to do is just move in a direction, like execute on a plan and get it done. And it's, I don't know, that's a real useful one to be aware of. But it also means that if you don't do that, then they're suspicious of you. That's the thing about the winners. It's like, if you don't show up, of course you're going to back yourself. Why wouldn't you? Why would you come in here saying, oh, I'm just going to, see what happens?
Yeah.
Very English. Like, if you do that, then they're very suspicious of you.
What other stuff would you say surprised you?
Surprises me. It's little. I mean, I've been here long enough now that I don't really know if I sort of remember everything. But I think when we caught up the other day for a beer, you made a comment which I hadn't sort of thought about it the way that you described it, which is that being outside of, you only realize the weirdness and nuance and sort of very specific details of your native culture. You only start really noticing that when you leave.
Oh yes. Yeah,
It's not so much that I come here and I'm surprised by how it is here, but it's more like now I look at the UK and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
The way things are in any given place from a cultural perspective are like that for, old and deep reasons mostly. But that doesn't mean you don't have to agree with it or play into it. And now there might be sort of clunky ways of getting around that, which, we might say that, being self-promoting or whatever, but in the UK might come across a little bit undesirable from the ears of someone else. But that just means you're doing it wrong. So how do you do it differently? How do you kind of get around that sort of that sort of stubborn nuance of UK culture but without stepping on people's toes and upsetting them? How do you sort of come at it from a third angle? It's not this, and it's not this.
Yeah, but I think it's really important. Like it's my new sort of current obsession is culture. I'm reading a book called The Cultural Shooter about how brands interact and interface with it. Because some of the best brand people I've spoken to, and you guys are definitely in that category, is there's an understanding of cultural norms. And I don't know, like some people at first I thought it was such a wanky thing when people would say brands shape culture or brands can change culture, but I really now believe they can, but they have to understand it first. That's why I'm trying to get a real rich understanding of it, because then you can kind of. And Seth Godin's books on strategy is amazing at this. He says, we're in these systems. So the system could be, we're in actual physical systems, like imagine that's like scaffolding. And then we're in this blanket that we put around it or over it, which is culture, which is all the social stuff. Yeah. So say with the example of minor figures, like the physical infrastructure and systems here of the US with all the different fucking, it's not like you just go and sell into Tesco, then bish, bash, bosh, we're in 6,000, whatever fucking number of stores. You've got all the actual physical system and then all the cultural stuff on top of it. And it's understanding those two things, I think, is really important.
Do you know what? The UK loves, it sort of has this way of being quite risk averse in the way that it buys. Like the consumer is risk averse and, everything's a chain. I mean, of course, there's like a sort of a strong, indie sort of culture as well. But like, everyone just like, we're not gonna, I'll get my M&S is.
M&S is so good.
M&S is great, obviously, but like, what I mean? It's like we'll get the thing, we'll get it from that place. But also, I think a way that shows up in a different way, which is kind of where I was trying to get with this thing, is that what I fucking hate about being on the tube is see it, say it, sorted. But it's like, I hate it for two reasons. One is like, is see it, say it, sorted. And they didn't do it right. It should have been see it, say it, sort it. But also because it's just this thing which like makes me kind of go, which is the everything has to be turned into a little bite-sized little token, like digestible thing. Oh yeah, it's the little song that I sing to myself, and it's like so like specifically English and annoying. And I think that
Oh, really interesting. Yeah.
like I don't know, it's just like everything when you watch like UK adverts, like for I don't know, if you're on like YouTube and you get an advert for a brand or something, and the equivalent brand over here, they just have this completely different way of doing it. But over there, it's also, I understand why Americans go to the UK and they go, it's everything just like so cute.
Yeah. Oh,
and I'm like, what do you mean? It's
it's like, well, no, but
it's fucking
it's like
Tesco.
but it's like every little helps.
Yeah, totally, dude. Every
Every
little
little helps. Whereas here, but literally, there's a sign. In fact, I'm going to take a picture. I want to take a picture. It's out there, right? Because I've been every time I've been driving around Nashville, I'm like, this guy's cracking me up. But it kind of typifies, and it goes just. I think I've talked about it already. It's just this severely faked hand, middle-aged guy with like a red. On this is on fucking. I've seen it on about 15.
Size of a fucking tennis court. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes, "Don't sell without the intel."
Yeah,
and then it's like, then we've got every little helps. Like it's just, I find that shit so fascinating.
Yeah, and it works. And I'm not saying they should change.
But it's just knowing it.
But to me,
knowing the arenas. It's knowing the arenas from a brand building perspective. And Mark Palmer, who was the marketing director at Green and Blacks, it was marketing director at Green and Blacks, but then was the marketing director at Pret. And Pret's a very, safe brand. Well, not safe brand, that's the word. Cute, pretty brand.
Yeah.
It's, fresh every day. And
and
like he was saying they launched the adverts into New York, and people were like, "What? No, this needs to.
Oh yeah,
you need to say you're the best coffee."
I think there was maybe a sort of an iteration on that, which I saw years and years ago, which was like they had this thing about being the best like British invasion since the Beatles or something.
Oh really? Was that Pret's thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, that's probably them punching it up.
I think they were trying. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty. Yeah.
Clearly didn't work.
Why Stu such a good leader? Like, talk to me. What's underrated about Stu? Do you think?
Stu,
obviously, I've interviewed him. I need to get him back on the pod because
a love letter to Stu.
Yeah.
Look, there's no one like Stu. There's no one like Stu.
How did you guys meet, or where did you meet?
We met. I was in about 2007 or 8 when I was working. I was a barista. Speaking of which, and I was. Whilst I was studying music at university there, just in Barbican, and there was a great coffee shop, Kiwi-run coffee shop. When specialty coffee in the UK was like a very, very sort of small deal. James Phillips, shout out James Phillips, Kiwi bloke. He opened a great coffee shop, still there, by Smithfield, called Dose, and I was like one of the sort of first 3 or 4 hires he had there. And it coincided with Stu and the awesome Baha both moving over.
Baha?
That's his wife's name.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Was that?
Iranian, Persian.
Oh,
she's
wow.
American. She grew up in Albuquerque. But anyway, she's amazing. But the two of them came over from us with Keep Cut, which was essentially the Forsyth family business, and one of them. And so Keep Cut, they wanted to sort of root down with the coffee community in the UK and London, and there weren't very many places to do that. So we met almost like pretty much the first week that they arrived, and became good mates. So that's how we know each other. Yeah.
And what would you say from business perspective is underrated about him?
Underrated about Stu? Shit. Underrated. Well, I don't know. I think that he's...
Just like, how's he a fucking animal?
He's an animal. He's absolutely a visionary. He's got the ability to set pace for an entire business, for an entire like life cycle, for a decade. He's the guy that runs the first like whatever it is 10 laps on the 800 meters, or you know what I mean, on the long mid distance race around the track. But he's never stopped being at the front. He never stops like maintaining. So
go granular on that, like on a weekly basis. Like, again, I'm just trying to get into understanding what it takes to get to that level. So he's in at what time again?
No, it's not even that. It's not about grind. It's about energy in the moments. It's about like he's not. I mean, yeah, like he's in office. Like he's not like sort of dialing it in. But it's like, I'm pretty sure he'll still take like sales meetings. Like he'll still go do things like that. Like, you know, if he's the guy to get the job done, he's got absolutely no like inhibition from doing something which maybe a CEO in another business or wherever might sort of think is like someone else's responsibility. And we've got that culture in the business. That was something that I think he kind of represented. But it was very. It became like everybody did that. Everyone sort of wore the responsibility of what they were doing at Minor Figures with a lot of pride, and I believe still do. You know, like much sort of later stage business than it used to be, but. I think a lot of that stuff remains. But yeah, incredible leader. He's the only person that I would sort of back to get the job done. Honestly, at that sort of, real.
Well, we talked about it when we were smashing that chicken and that booze on Saturday was, there's two types of brand builders. And this was what Stu said to me, is those who like push it or those who literally just pull it over grass. Not grass, that'd be quite easy. Glass.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We don't have to go here, but I'd love to. So you left in 2023. What was the why behind that?
Yeah. I left the business on very good terms, very friendly sort of exit. And not even an exit, like in the sense of an exit, just I resigned. And it was one of these things where sort of you're sort of soul searching, you're, what am I good at? What am I doing? And how does it all feel to be this experience? It was all kind of, turning over a bit. Like a lot of it to do with kind of personal stuff with, life in general. And, but also as the business scaled, and working out where I would fit into that. This is a really sort of, I don't know that I hear a lot of founders talking about this, but the truth is it happens. And I know that it happens to other people too, because you see these businesses where, the founder, who is the sort of automatic CEO or whatever, gets to a point where it's like, what the fuck? Like I'm basically employing everyone that I look at is better than me in a specialist sense at this thing. Founders have a very specific kind of skill. And, it's not automatic that you will remain the best person for the job forever, especially when businesses scale. And so there was two things happening. One of them was that I was, constantly looking around me thinking that everyone here is like amazing. And I'm like, not that I'm not amazing, not that I don't think that of myself at times, but like, I don't think that I'm doing it better than they could. So and maybe there's a bit of, maybe I should be on the couch for this one, but like, there's probably a bit of imposter syndrome in there as well. But like, that's one piece. But then it's also like, well, what am I good at? And is there a way that I can be that, I think that I have a feeling of wanting to be uninhibited. Like I want to find myself in a situation where the work I'm doing, lines up with the person that I am like, nicely. Like it's the same, not like all kind of twisted and wrong and or ill-fitting. And so it's like, well, take the sob story off the table. What are you good at and what do you like doing? And can you do it here? And the answer was kind of no. So after 10 years, I was like, well,
But what were you doing? Were you doing all the creativity stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I was by the, last few years, it was pure brand stuff. Running things like the sort of the music program with FM. And that had all kind of interesting, cool, different iterations too. And that lent itself into cool projects we did, like the Human Made collab and a bunch of really interesting sort of brand projects. But it's like the problem solving of early stage businesses when it's a bit more, you kind of a bit everywhere, and you can move fast and you can come up with ideas and you can ship them quick. And I know that that's something that a lot of there's like loads of businesses that are in that phase. So take an experience of founding and running, or being part of this kind of leadership team of a brand that had a lot of, like, I would say mainly sort of cultural sort of impact, meaning people know it and they typically like it, which means you've done something, not just to sort of have people aware of it, but people to go, I fucking love that brand. Like, that's a big deal. So that's something that I feel very confident that I was sufficiently part of to be able to come and take that and bring knowledge and skill and wisdom to other folks. So it felt like, and coincided with some other kind of family moves as well. So relocating and all this kind of other stuff. So being in the US, having the ability to meet and expand on sort of my personal network of people here now in New York and beyond, to offer that kind of knowledge and skill and guidance to founders and sort of CPG marketers and so on, who are in that sort of post-raise Series A, bringing up a sort of a culture or creative sort of aspirational brand that wants to do something cool and different and fun and impactful and sort of have that, like, drive commercial outcomes and so on, and doing that and sort of and starting not necessarily from ground zero, but like bringing that whole experience of coming from playing jazz trumpet, doing 10 years of that, and then doing something else. It's like a pretty wild, like, sort of contour, but making it make sense for myself so that I can kind of bring the whole thing that I've learned and make it make sense for other folks too. So that's what I do now. And that shows up in all kind of different ways. Yeah.
And so have you still got like shares in the business?
Yes.
So you'd still benefit from the exit?
I still absolutely I'm cheering on Minor Figures. Partly, the fact that we've spoken about it for as long as we have already just now. Like, I'm really kind of a huge fan of the onward success of that brand, and I love what they're doing. And I'm very friendly with the team still, and I catch up with Stu and Johnny.
But do you know, I'm not going to say the brand, but I went for dinner before I came out here with a big brand, the founder of it, and he was saying he's trying to extrapolate himself from the brand because it started off incredibly creative, and he said the work's become drudgery because I'm now. Basically, the business has got to a certain level that he's now working in. He basically works in HR, and he goes, "So I don't do anything creative now." And he's like, "I can't wait to kind of get rid of it," which I think they probably will do in a few years and make good money. Do you know what I mean? But and it's like sometimes the thing you create becomes a prison.
Yeah, and
it's like, and that's kind of why I do this. I don't want to raise I just want to just be creative.
Yeah.
And like anything else can fuck off.
Yeah,
basically, I'd rather, do you know what I mean?
Employ
and it takes balls to do that. And so I've got massive respect for you on that. Could find a couple of things, mate. So jazz, I love weird connections. Like Carl Jung's theory of synchronicity. You learn from one thing, you can learn anything. Like jazz, what are the lessons that you apply from jazz to brand building? Because you played what instrument?
Trumpet, still do. Yeah. I don't know if it's like principles that sort of map onto brand in particular.
It could be very tenuous.
But like certainly there are ways to. There are things about sort of developing a sound or like a sort of an identity or a personality. Because if we sort of we're not going to go down a music theory lesson, but like. Jazz, in the sense of improvising, is basically the spontaneous kind of rearrangement of vocabulary that you've learned with the injection of spontaneous innovation. So it's actually identical to what we all do all the time with language. Meaning these are not new words, right? They're just words that I know that we're spontaneously kind of putting in this order in order to communicate as a way of inputting into the kind of collective sort of interest. Meaning we're having a conversation. You know when it's time to listen, and then at a certain moment there's a cadence, there's a way of talking which will wrap up what we're doing and or what I'm saying, and you'll know it's your time to start talking. But what we're doing is we're building this thing together. We're doing it here. And the consequence of all that, if done well, musicianship, is that you create music, and music is the consequence people would rather jazz is people who are talking about a common interest, who have different perspectives, because you're on the bass and I'm on the trumpet, and we're just like doing it together. We're just like making it up as we go along. But you have always got the limitations. You've got the limitations of what you know and what they know. You've got the limitations of what is the song that we're playing. It can't be anything. I mean, maybe it can. That's free jazz. But like, it's just the things that it is. We've got these inherent sort of limitations, and you got to improvise within them. We're talking in English for a start. So improvising collectively to achieve a goal within the confines of the given limitations of the situation is exactly what you're doing when you're running a business. Like you know what you're doing. You've only got like the resources that you have, and you're trying to get everyone to kind of move in the same direction to achieve something. And I've always been instinctively kind of a bit more gestural in that way, a bit more improvisational with my kind of outlook and my life. But there's a way to do that in a way which is like effective for everyone, even those that need the kind of the rigor and the discipline and the sort of the data and the sort of the understanding. There's a way of being effective despite, you're not the fact that you're not being necessarily as everyone else would need you to be in an ideal world. Just to achieve the outcome. So I think, that's a massive ramble. I'm probably going to need a huge edit, but like...
No, I totally get it. And I get from a brand building perspective, it's having the vocabulary, and then we've all got that. And then also you said like a sound. I think if you could, brands can be defined as a sound, but almost how you get that, and the vocabulary of a brand is... this was exactly what Will Godara was saying yesterday. It became the best restaurant in the world. That vocabulary and what we were saying about intention plus language equals culture, intention plus language equals vocabulary. I think they're kind of the same kind of thing. When you have this to build off, it allows you to then go and be fucking come up with some crazy idea like the acid tripping thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think so when you build this deep understanding of jazz and not jazz, but like music and chords and stuff, that when you go up and play, you can kind of be freestyle and meander in the moment,
Yeah, I think that from the brand perspective, what the sound is a perspective, it's a point of view. Like what does this brand think or do in that situation? How does this brand show up when it's like in packaging or social media or whatever it is? And having your perspective basically means, what are all the brand touch points that orbit, or all the brand touch points do essentially orbit this kind of nucleus. They're all they're not linked to each other as much as they're linked to something.
What would be some of those touch points?
Say again?
What would be some of those touch points?
Anything, literally every single thing that shows up in the world. So,
like the Wi-Fi password.
Sure. Yeah. You're on your employee onboarding handbook.
Yeah. There's a cafe in Lisbon which is the Wi-Fi is like Wu Tang LAN. Because like LAN is it?
Oh,
like LAN's.
Yeah,
like LAN or something like that. But
local like area network. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like I just thought like this, you can.
Yeah, that's right. You can do that. Everything that happens internally and externally in the business, and I mean, a lot of people think brand is sort of the very obvious things that it still is, but it's actually that's the tip of the iceberg. Like packaging and social media is the tip of the iceberg. It's everything that shows up in the world, all the details that you have an opportunity to sort of have an impact on how they look, feel, or read. Like they will, like your email flow, your the terms and conditions on your thing, or and anything. That's all a touch point. But what decisions are you making about how those touch points should live? Like how anchoring them to something. And ultimately, they all come back to some kind of nucleus perspective. And it's not a 10 commandments, like live and die by it, like that's it. But it's some kind of principle that helps you kind of make decisions which are coherent and also kind of have the sort of the impact of being more than the sum of their parts.
Brand vocabulary is a really nice way of putting it, because that's why I love is it's because it's not, I think having brand values and principles is too reductive in some respects, because it's I mean, that's great for galvanizing a team, but like in terms of that brand intuition, having actual vocabulary and like a deeper understanding, when brand in service to problem, you can call upon that. And that's something you can get through, you know, through jazz, through all, you know, long periods of doing it, of being out on the streets, of asking the question behind the question. Like that builds this kind of moving organism of brand vocabulary that when you go out into the real world to solve the problems, like it's all there.
Yeah.
Sick. Mate, let's wrap that up so we need to get to the airport. But that's been fucking sick, man. Really
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you're loving the episode. I'd appreciate a really small yet significant favor, por favor. Please may you click the subscribe button, get in the comments, tell me what you think about the episode, tell me what you think we did on the show. It may not seem much, but it really helps us grow and helps us get bigger guests. Thank you so much.